Thank you. Thank you. I was listening so intently this morning. I learned so much. Now my head is full. But I want to connect some of what we talked about this morning to my presentation. But to do that, I have to be creative because I didn't plan it. And so I'm going to ask you all to do something. I want you to think of a relationship in your life that you want to be better. And I want you to think about that relationship as we discuss relationship intelligence today. Because this idea of anxiety is a beautiful word to explore. Because at work, oftentimes, we pretend that we are not anxious. And meanwhile, everybody is anxious. Everybody feels the changes that are coming, and they wonder, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? And one of the answers to this, to be happy at work, is to understand how to be in relationship in a way that allows us to wonder, that allows us to be curious, and allows us to take our anxiety and use it as something that allows us to move that curiosity into creativity. The outcome of being relationally intelligent is simple. We can build trust, we can generate commitment, and we can drive results, both as an individual, in relationship with another person, and as a team, and even as an organization, and maybe as a society. We show this picture in our training. I've shown this thousands of times. And we ask, what word would you use to describe the person throwing the water? Would you use mean? Would you use frustrated? Would you use mischievous? A joker? This requires us to get the rest of the story. When we get more information, what we know changes. We've all done this in relationship, where we've reacted to something, then we got more information, and we say, if I knew that, I would not have reacted that way. And so the question in relationship is this: is there information we can get so that we see a bigger picture? We see the hat on fire before we respond, not after we respond. And we're going to talk today about how that information can come to us and how we can share it. Because self-awareness is a foundational leadership concept, yes. But you have to be able to be self-other aware. So it's not only your awareness of self, it's your awareness of how yourself is perceived by another. Because self-awareness alone, if we combine that with power, that can actually do harm. But if we are self-aware and other-aware, then something happens between us so that our anxiety is engaged in a more productive way and innovation comes out of our interactions. I love this picture, right? We do this every day. We make a decision, then we get more information. So let's talk about this. What is a relationship? A relationship is a connection between people built on a foundation of shared experiences, interactions, and expectations. An interaction happens in a moment, but a relationship happens over time. And so what happens in some relationships, if we have a negative experience, it starts to affect our interactions, and then it starts to affect our expectations. And so when we are in relationship, we have to ask 3 questions. You're all thinking of a relationship. I asked you to think of a relationship. Ask yourself this: how favorable do you view the past experiences? How productive are the current interactions? And how attractive and aligned are your future expectations? Because if we answer those questions and we say the past experience is not positive, then until we address that, until we get more information and we can understand what we're seeing, it's going to affect our interactions and it's going to affect our expectations. So the question becomes, what information can help us recast a past experience? So this is the framework. This is how relationships really work. We have a book coming out in early 2024 that's going to talk about how relationships work. You have shared experiences, present interactions, and hopefully aligned expectations. But there's a problem. And the problem is this: people are complex and different, and this shapes every relationship. So sometimes we see a picture, they see the hat on fire, we may not. And so the question is this really a problem? No, this is an opportunity. This is the foundation of creativity and innovation. We see the world differently. And if we can understand what is happening as we engage the world from different places, then innovation becomes more possible. So if the only perspective that matters is the person who is in charge, then we have one perspective. But if that leader understands their job is to bring these perspectives to look at a problem or a challenge or an opportunity and integrate them, then all of a sudden what's possible in the future makes us less anxious and more excited. So what we have to do is learn to shape our relationships. And how do we shape our relationships? Well, we can learn as a skill to recast the past when we need to. We can learn as a skill to master the moment. And we can learn as a skill to co-create the future so that our expectations integrate. So when you take the SDI, which was mentioned this morning at Core Strengths, the information you get, so you can see the hat on fire before and not after, is this. You get 4 views of a person. If we talk about self-awareness, this is what you can be aware of. The views are broken down into personality and behavior. And the picture we use is an anchor and a buoy in the ocean. The anchor we don't see. The buoy we do see. The anchor is your personality, your motive. It's connected to your motivation. And your personality has 2 conditions: when things are going well and when you are in conflict. And so that's your first 2 views. The second views are on strengths. Strengths are behaviors that we choose. And so why do we choose our behaviors? If I want to understand that about myself or someone else, I can connect it to the motive. So let's explore the 4 views. Anyone you ever meet has 3 motives. Everybody has three core motives. We color them blue, red, and green. But what does that mean? Everybody has a drive to help others. Everybody has a drive to achieve results. And everybody has a drive to establish order. So if everybody has the same motives, why is it that we don't understand people? Well, because how we prioritize these motives is different. Some people prioritize performance first, some people prioritize people first, and some people prioritize process first. And this is where that complexity of relationship starts to root. So when things are going well, one question we want to ask, and you can ask this about the relationship you're thinking about, is this: do you prioritize your motives the same as this person? Do you prioritize people and they prioritize performance? Do they prioritize process? Maybe they don't like to take risk. Maybe they don't like to move as fast as you do. Or maybe they like to move faster than you do and take more risk. Because as we begin to look at the relationship, the first question we ask is, how do I prioritize my motives, and how does that compare to somebody else? So if we prioritize the three core motives, that gives us one insight to help us better understand the person we're in relationship with. The next view is what happens when the way we prioritize our motive is not being appreciated. The way we prioritize our motive maybe is being made fun of or disregarded. This puts us into conflict, because one of the ways we feel good about ourselves and find our happiness at work is when someone recognizes our motive and thanks us for it. But if instead of being thanked for our motive, we're being made to feel bad about it, we move into conflict. And when we're in conflict, our motives shift. So the second question we ask about someone we're in relationship with is, first one is, how do we prioritize our motive? Second is, how do they and I respond when my motives are feeling under threat? This might be the most important slide I show. Okay? Look at the first sentence. The first sentence of all three responses to conflict. You believe that the best way to show you care about the problem. So the way we respond to conflict, everyone responds to conflict with a desire to show that they care about the problem. But how we show that care is what makes us different. Some people accommodate. You believe that the best way to show you care about the problem in other people is to listen to their concerns and accommodate them if possible. How many of you feel like that's how you handle conflict? You try and listen and find a way to accommodate the other person. Some people assert. They believe that the best way to show they care about a problem is to respond immediately and do something before the problem gets worse. How many of you can recognize that in yourself, that when there's an issue, you want to respond immediately? Other people believe that the best way to show you care about the problem is to give it the time and attention it needs so you can solve it correctly. So imagine if two people are in relationship and one person responds to conflict by wanting to take time and attention so they can solve it correctly, and the other person wants to respond immediately so the problem doesn't get worse. This is where the anxiety increases, because the way we are making sense of the world is now colliding with somebody else. So we use these chairs sometimes. What if someone accommodates and somebody asserts and somebody analyzes? This problem that we're all looking at, we're going to see differently because what we're looking for is different. And so when we understand motive, if we understand, the second question you should ask yourself about the relationship that you want to improve is when there's conflict, how do you respond and how do they respond? Are you able to integrate those responses, or do those responses collide and then cause problems? The third view of someone else's strengths. What choice of strength do they make to bring their motives into the world? Some people choose to be forceful. Some people choose to be methodical. Some people choose to be helpful. And oftentimes we choose those strengths. Why? Because they connect to our motive. But the question is, if we are self and other aware, we should not choose our strength simply on what we're comfortable, but we should choose our strength based on the other person and the problem that we're dealing with. This is the essence of relationship intelligence, is that because you're considering the other, because you're aware of the problem, you can now see that hat on fire and maybe choose to respond differently. If we thought to ourselves, that person in the picture is frustrated, we would respond a certain way. But when we realize that they're being helpful because there's a hat on fire, that would change our response. And so many people view strengths as a trait, similar to the color of your eyes, that there's certain strengths you have and certain strengths you don't. But that's a very limited view of our ability to grow and learn. If we understand our motive, if we are people motivated, being helpful may come easily to us. But everybody who's people motivated has known there's been a time where they've helped too much, right? If we are a performance person and we use persuasion to get something done, we know there's times when we have persuaded too much. And this leads into our fourth view, which is overdone strengths. So if we are thinking of that relationship that can be better, ask yourself, what strengths are you using in that relationship? Is that getting you the results you want? Because if it isn't, there's an opportunity to choose a different strength. Why? Still for the reason that matters to you. So there is time for a people-motivated person who would prefer to be helpful to sometimes have to actually be persuasive to be the most helpful. And so when we think about overdone strengths, people will ask me all the time, what's the difference between an overdone strength and a strength? And the difference is the outcome. If you're choosing a response to a situation and it is not working, it is worth considering that either you are overdoing it or the other person feels as if you're overdoing it. And our ability to choose another strength is us being relationally intelligent in the world. Oftentimes, if we want to understand why someone is getting frustrated with us, if we look at the strengths we're using and we ask them, what would it look like to overdo that strength? We can get insight into why the relationship is currently having some stress. So these are the questions that we ask if we want to be relationally intelligent. First of all, do we know what really matters to those we are in relationship with? The conversation before mine this morning was the recognition that the individual, right, this idea of the nuclear individual versus the nuclear family, right? People want and need two things. They need to matter, and they need to be part of something that matters. So the reason the Noble company will do better in the long term is because people know they're part of something that matters. But the other part of that equation is someone letting them know they matter. And if we know their motive, if we know how they respond to conflict, and we thank them for engaging the world that way, they will know they matter. If we compliment them connected to their motive, they will feel fully seen, fully valued. And then once they are and realize they are connected to a company that is doing noble work, this is your main concern: attract talent, develop talent, retain talent. In the world today, if you want to retain talent, you have to make sure that people know they matter and that they are part of something that matters. Yes? Do we work on connecting what is important to us to the work we do? If we understand people's motives, we can now connect that motive to whatever task or responsibilities they have at work. When we connect what we do at work to our motive, work doesn't drain us. It energizes us. And so every leader out there should know, what is the motive of each of the people who report to me? And am I helping them connect that to the work they're doing? Do we consider what matters to others when the behavior is surprising? If we're frustrated, we can go through this exercise we just did. How do I prioritize my motives? How do they prioritize their motives? How do I respond to conflict? How do they respond to conflict? Oftentimes when we compare, all of a sudden we understand why we're frustrating each other. And instead of colliding, we can integrate. Because the better idea is born out of our difference, if we are appreciative of that difference. Do we consider what behavior of our own may be surprising or frustrating to others? Our intention is good, but if someone's motive, if we are process motivated, so we're trying to get order, and someone is performance oriented and wants to move fast, even though we're doing something with the best of intention, we may be able to understand that frustration and then in the relationship figure out how we integrate what matters to us. I'll finish by saying this. It was a gift to be here this morning because I got to hear talks that enriched my life, that helped me better understand and be hopeful about what we're leaning into. Because we will need to learn together really well in order to face the challenges that the world is presenting to us. But I believe in my heart that the reason those challenges are being presented to us is to inspire us to appreciate each other, to see our differences as a gift and not a curse. Because if we do that, then the world will build trust, generate commitment, and drive results. And that is a world that all of us desire. But it will take all of us working hard to be in relationship with others in a way that's appreciative and productive to realize that future. Thank you very much.